Alrighty, so the story for today, I actually got the suggestion from my Discord server. If you go there, I have a spot for video suggestions. If you go into that server, you can put down things that you would like to see me make a video about in the future, or things that you're curious what my thoughts are on. If you go there and put that down, I might make a video based on your suggestion. This is going to be one of those videos. As a matter of fact, I already had this one kind of on the list. I saw it a week or so ago and I had emailed it to myself and I was going to make a video on it. Luckily, somebody reminded me. So here we are. The story that I have that we're going to begin with, it comes from this publication called Law Enforcement Today. It's like they have a Facebook page and a web page. It appears to be a bunch of law enforcement officers who contribute and write these stories. A word on the source of this particular article myself. This is a publication that I've been aware of for a little over a year, and it's not somebody that I follow. I actually stopped following them a while back because their stories are extremely slanted, which I get. Everything that I do is going to have a slant too. I have my opinion and I have my biases, but these ones, it borders on misleading. So, and they're also a lot of the way they write, it's like they're trying to get people angry. I don't appreciate that technique or that style. I don't like it when people on the other side of the equation do it. So I'm not going to support it when people who kind of support my beliefs are doing it to other people. That's just kind of the way I feel. So anyway, the headline is Sergeant who won Medal of Valor facing losing his job for wrongful arrest involving an armed convicted felon. The armed convicted felon in this story is Mr. Jeremy Dewitte. Everybody knows who Jeremy Dewitte is. He's a serial police impersonator. I'm not going to show any of his videos or anything like that. The guy's a freaking clown. He operates some kind of like funeral escort business and security company where it's a bunch of guys who dress up like police officers, act like police officers, but then when they're pinned down, they say, no, we're not police officers. Well, he's been convicted of impersonating a police officer, and he's going to go to jail for that. I'll cover that here in a moment. But in this story, this Sergeant Keith Vidler, was cruising along, sees Jeremy Dewitte, who he knows and has interacted with in the past, knows that Mr. Dewitte is a felon and he's not allowed to be in possession of a firearm. So he has a traffic stop, walks up to him, secures him, takes this firearm off of Mr. Dewitte's hip, says, you are a felon. This is a firearm. You're not allowed to have it. I'm going to charge you with a crime. A little bit of background into this sergeant. The story that I found, it goes into a little bit of the details about the Pulse nightclub. This Sergeant Vidler sounds like he's an incredible deputy. He was one of the first people through the door. He was pulling people out of the Pulse nightclub. If you don't remember, that was the, I don't know what the proper way to say it. It was a gay bar that was being shot up by it turned out he was Middle Eastern, guy with like an AR style rifle, shot a bunch of people. I'm not sure how many died. It was a horrible, horrible tragedy. And this sheriff's deputy at the time was one of the first people through the door, pulling people out while under gunfire. His actions were nothing short of heroic, and I think he's probably a phenomenal law enforcement officer. The story goes on to talk about this particular arrest and how the firearm that they found on him was not an actual firearm. It was a gun that had been modified to fire pepper balls. So here's kind of how they kind of spin this article. Is it this one? No, it's down here. So in the article it states, within hours after the arrest, members of the Orange County Sheriff's Office command staff formulated a plan to unarrest Jeremy Dewitte and target Keith Vidler and Corporal Ramsey. This is the part that is a little bit misleading. and I'm going to show you why. So since Jeremy Dewitte's arrest, he has pled guilty. I'm going to highlight that. Guilty to all of the crimes that Sergeant Vidler and Corporal Ramsey were allowed to submit during their investigation and prosecuted by the state attorney's office. So if you read this story, what you would believe is that this sergeant pulled over Mr. Dewitte, recognized him as a felon, recognized that he was carrying a firearm, charged him with a firearm, and that Jeremy Dewitte pled guilty to possessing a firearm as a felon, and that for some reason this sergeant is still being targeted by his department. That's not actually true. Let's see. Here's a headline from the Orlando Sentinel. Concealed weapon charges dropped against man known to impersonate law enforcement, records show. I wasn't able to find the actual case details, but here's Jeremy Dewitte. They go through the story and said that he was carrying a gun belt and a firearm that resembled a Glock. The problem is the gun he was carrying wasn't a real gun. Due to the fact that the chemical weapon device did not have any chemical projectiles loaded in the magazine, the defendant was not carrying a weapon for personal protection, but rather the appearance of a firearm to gain compliance from civilians during his escorts, which the defendant confirmed through previous interviews. So when you charge somebody with possession of a firearm, at least in Ohio, the weapon has to be loaded. Or there's a lot of different things that come into it, but there has to at least be ammunition in the very near vicinity. Courts handle those things differently, but you have to have a gun, you have to have bullets. If you don't, then you can't charge the person. So the allegation against this sergeant is that he knew Jeremy Dewitte and that he had been, I don't know, for lack of a better term, kind of stalking him and looking for a reason to arrest and charge him. That part I don't necessarily have a problem with, because Jeremy Dewitte is a scumbag. He's an idiot. He's known to impersonate police officers. So local law enforcement should have their eye on him, keep an eye out for him. And when they see him doing something that's wrong, they should stop him. The problem is, if you stop him and you don't find a credible thing to charge him with, then you can't charge him. With the agency that I work for, we have detectives. We call them the gun crimes unit. If I arrest somebody with a firearm, I call up to them and they'll tell me whether or not I can file the charges. There's a lot of things that go into that. The circumstances of how you came across that person, how you got a search on them, how you came across the firearm, if there were bullets in the firearm. If I call upstairs and I haven't met enough of the criteria, they'll tell me not to charge the person. Or it's very common also, they'll say, look, we're not going to put him in jail today, but we're going to go ahead and take this, put it in a packet. We're going to submit it to a grand jury. If a grand jury thinks that charges should be filed, they'll go ahead and file the charges on your behalf. That's probably something that should have happened in this case with his pepper ball gun. I don't know if a pepper ball gun constitutes an illegal firearm in the state of Florida. It probably does, but regardless, he didn't have ammunition for it. Now, the question that needs to be answered is, was that sergeant aware of that part of the law when he filed the charge? The allegation being made against him by the command staff of the agency he works for is that he was probably aware that you needed to have ammunition in the gun in order to charge somebody. So they're saying that he willingly and knowingly filed charges that he knew were inappropriate. That's what he's being disciplined for. It's important that you have the correct information when you're putting out stories like this. So My personal thoughts, I think I've covered them. It's your responsibility to know the laws that you're charging people with. If not, you have to answer for those. If you're charging somebody and you take them to jail, and it turns out that you charged them under bogus circumstances, or that the defense can paint a picture that you did it under bogus circumstances, then you're opening up your agency for a civil lawsuit, and they could lose millions of dollars. In this case, I don't think it'd be millions of dollars, but there's still a good chance that a settlement is going to be reached, and then punishments are handed down. I don't know if it's a fireable offense, but I can understand how it could be a fireable offense. If they can make a case that he knew he was charging somebody with a felony and he didn't have the proper probable cause, if they can prove that he knew that, then it probably is a fireable offense. It's your job to know what you're charging people for. So I hope that answers your question. It's not the happiest video in the world, but those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.